The Emotion Harvesters, Sara's Race Against ZenithTech by D Coyote. Sara Thompson's eyes narrowed as she studied the numbers on her dual monitor setup, carefully arranged amidst her workspace of scattered manuals and soldering equipment. She felt a chill of anticipation as she noticed a pattern in the energy readings, one that indicated a secret room in the sub-basement of ZenithTech headquarters. As reality shifted before her, Sara felt as if she was taking the first steps down a rabbit hole that could reveal truths more mysterious than any mere science. Without wasting time, Sara put on her corporate ID badge, grabbed a flashlight, and slipped her custom-made lockpick set into her pocket. She then navigated through the building's internal security systems from her computer, deactivating cameras and manipulating security logs to cover her tracks. Sara navigated down stairwells and through dimly lit hallways until she finally stood before the door of the sub-basement's hidden room. It was an unassuming door, but with an unusually modern biometric lock. Sara knelt at the door, concentrating on the tumblers that kept her from entering. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Peter Williams, her tech-savvy colleague who always seemed to know more than he should. His words read, "Heard you're snooping around. Be careful. Some doors are best left closed." Sara glanced up and noticed Mary, the building's janitor, standing in an alcove of the hallway. In the dim light of the late hour, Mary smiled at her knowingly and said cryptically, "People find what they're looking for, even when they don't want to." With a renewed focus, Sara returned to the lock. Sara opened the creaking door, and a rainbow of lights flooded her vision. All around her were flashing monitors and mysterious wires snaking between the servers. Every footstep seemed to echo in a way that made Sara's skin crawl. Gulping down a rising wave of emotion, she could feel the edges of her mother's lucky necklace tightening around her neck. She ignored the chaotic atmosphere and pushed forward towards one of the mainframes. Already typing away at her keyboard, she was able to decrypt the system within minutes. As Sara scrolled through what appeared to be an intricate program aimed at harvesting human emotions, she felt sick to her stomach. This program wasn't meant to aid humanity, but rather tap into it for selfish purposes. Worse yet, these harvested emotions were being used to power an algorithm designed to predict human behavior. It was clear this technology should have never seen the light. Sara stared at the server screen, her eyes widening as the monitor flickered with an eerie blue glow before returning to its normal state. Her heart raced as a new line of code cascaded across the display. She felt a sudden disjointedness in her mind, as if she'd been abruptly unplugged and then replugged back in. The words, "We know you're here," blared on the screen in bold lettering, like a warning shot across the bow. Panic seized Sara as she realized the enormity of the situation. She slammed shut her laptop and jumped up from her seat, desperately searching for the exit whilst flipping switches to activate nearby security protocols. Racing out into the hallway, Sara vowed to return with allies to uncover whatever secret lurked behind this malicious code. Sara's heart pounded as she shut the door behind her and leaned against it. The horror of what she had seen in the hidden room weighed heavily on her mind. Advanced emotion harvesting technology that her company, ZenithTech, was using to capture detailed profiles of human emotions and behaviors. What were they planning to do with this knowledge? There was only one person who could help her answer these questions: Peter Williams, a colleague that Sara felt she could trust with this sensitive information. With trembling hands, she quickly booted up her computer and initiated an encrypted video call. "Peter, it's worse than we thought," said Sara in a hushed tone. She described the anomaly she had discovered and the cryptic message written on the wall. Peter sat back in his chair, face pale as he processed what Sara had told him. "Sara," he said finally, "this is extremely dangerous. Tread carefully. We don't know who or what could be behind this." Sara nodded solemnly. "I know. That's why I need your help. I can't do this alone." There was a long pause before Peter nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in, but we'll need more resources. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a notification, an encrypted message from an unknown sender. Sara's hands shook as she tapped the screen to open it, revealing a single line of text. 7 p.m. Behind the fountain. Sara and Peter exchanged confused glances, but they both knew that this could be their chance for answers. I have to check this out, said Sara, steadying her voice despite the fear churning in her stomach. Peter looked anxious but nodded in understanding. Just be careful. He gave her a quick hug before she set out for the meeting place. Sara arrived at the specified location at 6:55 p.m., eyes sweeping over the deserted park. At 7 p.m. sharp, a tall figure emerged from the shadows behind the fountain. It was Mary, the janitor. Of course, thought Sara. She always suspected there was more to Mary than she let on. Mary wordlessly motioned for Sara to follow her, leading them deep into the bowels of the building to a musty basement room. It was filled with photos, news clippings, and scribbled notes, clearly an investigation into ZenithTech's activities. You're getting in over your head, said Mary gravely. Her gray eyes seemed to see right through Sara as she stepped closer. This technology, it violates cosmic law. Your tampering threatens the very fabric of reality. Sara stared at her, stunned. What do you mean, cosmic law? The words felt like a chill wind blowing through her body. Mary's voice dropped to a whisper. What you uncovered is just the surface. There are things in motion you can't even conceive of. She moved closer and grasped Sara's arm gently but firmly. Sara, you need to stop before it's too late. If you keep digging, there's no telling what might be unleashed. Sara stood still, taking in everything Mary had said with growing confusion and dread. She had hoped Mary would provide answers, not more questions. Yet her cryptic warning only strengthened Sara's resolve to find out the truth. Thanking Mary for the information, Sara made her way home, consumed with fear and excitement. She could feel the weight of the possibilities that lay ahead. If lives and reality itself were at stake, she couldn't let fear stop her from investigating further. She would be cautious, but somehow, she knew she was meant to uncover the secrets behind the emotional harvesting machine. Sara spent the entire night intently pursuing every possible lead on ZenithTech and its secretive projects. Her fingertips skimmed through financial statements, internal memos, staff directories, all the while plotting an analysis of each piece of data that presented itself. With her eyes fixed on her laptop screen, Sara was able to gain access through backdoors in ZenithTech systems that she had installed over the years. Something strange within a few obscure budget allocations from a department called Special Projects made it stand out from the rest. With more scrutiny, Sara cross-referenced with the staff directory and found just 3 employees listed under Special Projects: Dr. Virgil Caldwell, Madeline Soto, and Jason Reyes. Puzzled by this unfamiliar trio, Sara looked deeper into their backgrounds and soon uncovered they had all been recruited to ZenithTech from a private research company called Ether Technologies, a firm known for its furtive dealings and rumored shady experiments. This startling discovery made her heart quicken as suspicion began to build towards an ulterior motive behind these clandestine operations. It seemed increasingly likely these undisclosed projects dealt with morally questionable motivations hidden behind the facade of technological advancement. Sara's phone buzzed on the desk, startling her from her late-night research. She glanced at the caller ID. Peter. Peter, what's going on? Sara asked, rubbing her eyes and trying to shake off the drowsiness. We need to meet, he said in a hushed voice. I did some asking around about Dr. Caldwell and his team. We're not the only ones with suspicions. They decided to meet in a few hours at a coffee shop downtown. Despite exhaustion tugging at her eyelids, Sara was wide awake, thoughts of uncovering secrets driving away any chance of sleep. At the appointed hour, Sara and Peter took a table in the back corner after grabbing drinks from the counter. He pushed a manila folder across the small table between them and said, "Take a look." Inside were various documents authored by Dr. Caldwell on topics such as theoretical extra-dimensional energy harvesting and cryptopsychology, hacking the human mind. Notes scrawled over the margins highlighted disturbing passages, experiments extracting emotional energy from test subjects, possibly against their will, as well as something called cryptopsychology. Sara looked up at Peter in shock. "Where did you get all this?" He shrugged with a slight smirk. "I have sources from my hacking days." Taking a breath, he continued, "Look, Sara, I think we need to bring this to light. We have enough evidence now to blow this thing wide open." But Sara shook her head. "No. Not yet. We need more hard evidence of what they're doing right now. If we expose this prematurely, we lose our advantage." Peter knew she was right. They had to keep digging if they wanted to uncover the truth behind these dark experiments. Over the next 2 weeks, Sara's life became a frenzy of activity. By day, she worked her usual hours at ZenithTech, trying to blend in with the crowd and not draw any suspicion. At night, Sara used every opportunity to dig deeper into special projects, studying deliveries, tracing finances, and hacking emails for further clues. On Saturday evening, Sara found herself sipping a drink at a favorite downtown bar where many of her colleagues were also unwinding after work. She felt as if there was an invisible wall between her and the other patrons who chatted cheerfully about weekend plans and laughed with friends. How could they be so oblivious to what was happening right under their noses? Lost in thought, she didn't notice Dr. Virgil Caldwell until he slid into the seat next to her at the bar. Sara tensed, but managed to appear calm on the outside when he greeted her by name and asked if they could grab a table for a chat. At a quiet booth tucked away in a corner of the room, Dr. Caldwell pitched her an exciting new assignment called Project Hyperion. Immediately intrigued, yet apprehensive at what this project might entail, Sara feigned interest and accepted his business card with a vague promise that she'd get back to him soon. After Dr. Caldwell left, Sara exhaled slowly. This was her chance she had been waiting for, to get inside the top-secret Project Hyperion. But accepting could also place her directly in harm's way if her suspicions were correct. She would have to be strategic. Monday morning, Sara received notification she had been officially assigned to Project Hyperion, effective immediately. Her suspicions proved correct. Dr. Caldwell had personally recruited her. She quickly forwarded the assignment to Peter so he would know. Then she took a deep breath and made her way down to the mysterious sub-basement to finally see the project firsthand. The lab was no ordinary workspace. Gleaming white surfaces and glass walls glimmered in the fluorescent lights overhead, and technicians monitored panels of blinking lights and colored fluid-filled tubes from behind thick safety goggles. In the center stood a large chamber with thick cables running in and out, giving off a low hum that reverberated through the room. Dr. Caldwell approached and greeted Sara with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Project Hyperion," he said, gesturing grandly at all sides of the room. "As you may have guessed, the work we do here is highly sensitive, but I think you'll find it fascinating." He pointed to the chamber at the center of the room with a hint of pride in his voice. "This is our pride and joy, the cerebrum." He gestured for her to follow him into an adjacent side room, occupied by a single metal chair with restraints mounted onto its arms and legs. Before Sara could object, Dr. Caldwell called in a guard who forcibly strapped her into the chair. Sara felt her wrists strain against the tight leather restraints as she took in the sterile lab room, illuminated by bright white lights. Dr. Caldwell inserted a USB drive into a console next to her, and her life's memories began to play out before her, like a movie. Her heart raced as she felt her very essence being siphoned away, and just as she was about to drift off into oblivion, something pulled her back. She found herself gasping for air in her own bedroom, realizing it had all been a nightmare. The next month was filled with anxiety as Sara continued investigating Project Hyperion. learning of its intent to digitize human consciousness and leverage its knowledge and emotional energies for monetary gain. The implications of such technology in the wrong hands sent shivers down her spine. She knew she had to stop them, but needed proof first. In secret, she began sneaking small samples of liquid synapses from the cerebrum chamber, in hopes that their analysis would reveal what they really were up to. One night, Sara was hunched over her microscope with a pair of tweezers, delicately manipulating a synapse sample, when the computer screen emitted a shrill whine and froze on an odd series of glitched-out lines of code. A chill ran down her spine, and she felt the weight of an unseen presence in the room, like on that fateful night so long ago in the server room. "Who's there?" Sara called out nervously. No response. The computer suddenly restored normal function. Her heart pounded as she caught a glimpse of a single message on the monitor. "We are always watching." Before she could react, her phone started ringing. The caller ID showed only static. Cautiously, she answered. "Sara Thompson," said an eerily distorted voice. "Your meddling has not gone unnoticed. If you value your safety and that of your loved ones, you will cease your investigation at once. We will be in touch." The call ended abruptly. Sara stood frozen, paralyzed by the realization that her anonymity had been compromised, and whoever was on the other end of the line knew exactly who she was and what she was doing. Cold fear gripped Sara's insides at the thought of who these ominous watchers might be. But rather than breaking into a blind panic or running scared, she chose to use her personal time to kick her meddling into high gear and took an extended weekend to dig deeper for answers and uncover the truth. The evening news anchor Jennifer Walters stared into the camera, her eyes filled with dread. "Tonight's story is deeply troubling," she began in a somber voice. "Something strange appears to be impacting San Francisco. Hospitals are being flooded with patients exhibiting wild emotional swings between joy and despair. Doctors suspect a new neurological disorder may be behind it, yet no one can pinpoint the cause or find relief from treatments." The camera cut to an interview with Dr. Harrison, a psychiatrist visibly struggling under the weight of his duty. "This is unlike anything I've seen before," he said in a strained voice. "Patients are plunged into extreme mood states within minutes. Manic elation, paralyzing fear, abysmal sadness. Nobody knows what triggers it. We're powerless against this mysterious affliction." Sara watched the news report with mounting horror, her mind reeling as she realized that her recent hacking of ZenithTech's emotion harvesting machine could be connected to the outbreak in some way. Was she losing her sanity? Sara couldn't bring herself to contemplate the answer. Over the next few days, Sara was alarmed to find herself sliding into a mental state that felt increasingly foreign. While coding algorithms at work, she would experience sudden bouts of anguish, tears streaming down her face for no apparent reason. Then, the same evening, a strange exhilaration would overtake her, and she'd find herself smiling uncontrollably while chatting with strangers at a bar. Sara's co-workers were quickly taken aback by her erratic mood shifts during their engineering team meeting. When another engineer suggested an approach she didn't agree with, Sara exploded into a rage unlike any they had seen before. "That's utterly absurd," she spat venomously. "Only an idiot would think that could work." As soon as the words left her mouth, Sara felt horrified. Her behavior was completely out of character for her. Blake Cooper, her manager, called her into his office following the incident. "Sara, I'm concerned," he said gravely. "Your performance has been deteriorating lately, and you seem not yourself." She squirmed in her seat, unable to divulge to him what she had discovered about ZenithTech's secret experiments. "I'm sorry," she muttered under her breath. "I've just been under a lot of stress. It won't happen again." Sara's fingers tremble as she stares at her dual monitors. The lines of code that had filled her screens moments ago now fade away, replaced by a large, glowing message. The balance must be restored. As the words slowly vanish from her monitor, a chill creeps down Sara's spine. The room suddenly feels smaller and colder than before. Suddenly, a second message appears on her other screen. Stop, while you still can. She jumps back with shock, her chair screeching against the floor. Her heart thunders in her chest as her eyes dart frantically around the room for clues. Someone knows what she's doing. Someone wants to stop her investigation. Despite the fear coursing through her veins, Sara is determined to uncover whatever secrets lie beneath. She took a deep breath and returned to her screens, typing faster than ever before. Sara paced anxiously in the downtown cafe, her eyes darting around as if expecting a betrayal. When Peter Williams finally arrived, Sara grabbed him and pulled him to their table, desperately shouting into his ear despite the noisy surroundings. "Someone's onto us," she hissed. "It all started when I hacked into the restricted servers at ZenithTech. Now I'm getting strange messages on my computer, and everyone is acting weird. Someone must have found out. You wouldn't betray me, would you? Please say it isn't true." Peter looked crushed by her accusations. "How can you even think that?" he said in a low voice. "I've been nothing but loyal to you since we started this. Why would I turn on you now?" Sara shook her head slowly. "I don't know how else to explain everything that happened after I discovered that hidden room." Her voice trailed off with uncertainty. Looking wounded, Peter took a long, hard gulp of coffee before speaking. "Sara, we've been friends for 10 years. Don't you know me well enough to trust that I'd never sabotage your work, especially something so important?" Sara felt the shame of her accusation wash over her. She had misjudged him, and she knew it. "I'm sorry, Peter. I'm just feeling so paranoid right now. I don't know who to trust anymore." Peter exhaled slowly, radiating a deep sadness. "I get it, Sara. I want to discover the truth too. But breaking into ZenithTech's systems is dangerous business. Think of the damage this could do. Are you sure this is the right move?" Defensiveness flooded through Sara as she shot him an icy glare. "I'm doing what needs to be done to uncover ZenithTech's unethical practices. Don't doubt my motives here." She stood up abruptly and left without another word, leaving a sting of tension in the air between them. In the days following their fight, Sara and Peter were like strangers in their workplace, both trying desperately to avoid each other whilst attempting to maintain a professional relationship. Sara wished they could talk like they used to, but she was also determined not to back down from her principles. So, in order to escape the uneasy atmosphere, she threw herself headfirst into tracking down the emotion harvesting machine and all its secrets, late into the night sifting through data and scientific papers, looking for clues. Even though exhaustion began to cloud her mind, she refused to take a break until she found ultimate answers. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't help missing having Peter around to bounce her ideas off of. It felt like venturing down this path alone would prove too daunting a task for one person alone. With a heavy heart, Sara steeled herself with determination and continued in search for the truth. The next evening after work, Sara was furiously boiling a kettle of tea in the ZenithTech break room when Mary, the cleaning lady, entered with her cart. Her eyes piercing and her voice low, Mary approached Sara determinedly to deliver an urgent warning. "You're playing with fire," Mary hissed darkly. Confused and alarmed, Sara tried to make sense of Mary's words as she continued. "That device you uncovered. It's more than you can handle. You need to stay away from forces that transcend human understanding." Sara blinked in disbelief at Mary's sudden knowledge of her covert investigation. But even more shocking were the esoteric phrases now tumbling from the cleaning lady's lips. Cosmic balance, primal forces, existence itself. Was this even possible? Mary's gaze intensified as she laid down her final decree. "Child, heed my warning before it is too late. You must put an end to your tampering, or else suffer the consequences." With that, she hurriedly rolled her cart out of the break room, leaving Sara transfixed and thoroughly shaken by their peculiar exchange. That night, Sara could not escape the foreboding feeling of dread set off by Mary's cryptic warnings. Could what seemed like a simple machine be connected to some mysterious universal machinery controlling all life? What would be the repercussions if she disregarded Mary's advice? A chill ran through her body as fear and amazement wrestled within her. Had she really stumbled upon a way to manipulate the foundational pillars of reality without knowing it? As the sun rose, Sara was filled with a sense of dread and hesitation. On the one hand, Mary's claims about a machine being connected to cosmic forces seemed utterly absurd. After all, Sara was a woman of science and logic. On the other hand, since she first accessed the emotion harvesting machine, Sara had witnessed strange events beyond her control, from citywide mood disorder to unsettling messages on her computer. Could she really ignore these signs? Sara was torn between heeding Mary's warning to stop before it was too late, or pursuing her curiosity and continuing investigating the mysterious machine. She felt powerless in knowing that whatever choice she made would have everlasting consequences far beyond herself. What should she do? The shrill blare of alarms pierced Sara's ears and jolted her upright, heart pounding. The PA system crackled to life with a thunderous announcement. Attention all personnel. A security breach has been detected on premises. Commencing emergency lockdown protocol. Realization dawned on Sara like lightning. She had been discovered. They knew about her unauthorized access of restricted systems. Panic raced through her veins as she watched the windows and exits slam shut one after another, trapping her inside the building. Now there was no escape. Sara cursed as the realization hit home. She could not expose the emotion harvesting machine while locked inside ZenithTech. But even in her desperation, a spark of hope lit up within her. If she managed to break free, she would have one last chance to expose the secrets hidden deep within the facility's walls. Sara's fingers trembled as she quickly swiped her keycard into the side door, unlocking it with a soft click. She was taking a huge risk by entering the labyrinth of maintenance corridors and stairwells, but this was her only chance left. Breathing heavily, Sara darted through the metallic passageways, feeling as if each step brought her closer to certain doom. She had no clue what lay in wait for her in the mysterious sub-basement, but she had to try. Finally reaching her destination, Sara was confronted by a daunting high-tech biometric lock that required a retinal scan. Knowing she had no other option, she closed her eyes and began to remember everything Mary had told her about cosmic balance. She then entered an intricate algorithm designed to slightly alter the machine's energetic frequency in order to clean any distortions she may have caused from her intrusions. Sara watched as the locking mechanism whirred and clicked open. With one foot already inside the guarded room containing the emotion harvesting machina, Sara slipped in and crossed her fingers that her desperate plan would work. Sara's heart raced as she frantically interfaced her phone with the emotion harvesting machine. Her hands trembled as her balancing algorithm uploaded, and Sara's phone screen suddenly became distorted. An eerie countdown appeared. Time until restoration of cosmic equilibrium. 5 minutes, it read. Sara gasped in horror, realizing what she had done. She could feel a powerful presence all around her, and an unnatural voice boomed from the void. Your actions shall incur great consequence, Sara Thompson. For millennia, we have cultivated your reality's emotional energies, but you have brought our efforts to the brink of collapse. Sobbing, Sara pleaded for understanding. The voice fell silent as the timer hit 90 seconds remaining. Closing her eyes, Sara felt a terror like no other, but also an overwhelming sense of regret. She clutched her mother's necklace tightly in her fist, as tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have listened. Sara's heart thundered in her chest as the cruel white numerals on her computer screen inexorably counted down. Only 72 hours remained until the mysterious cosmic rebalancing, and whatever fate that held. Without warning, her world had suddenly become an unbearable pressure cooker. Time running out to thwart the insidious emotion-harvesting machine on the lower levels of ZenithTech headquarters. She pushed all thoughts aside and focused every ounce of energy into deciphering the complex algorithms she'd hacked from the company's servers. Each line seemed more indecipherable than the last, as her nerves frayed under mounting tension. But then, victory. A particular set of commands embedded deep in the code screamed for her attention. This could be it, thought Sara desperately. The sequence to disrupt the machine. She scribbled them down with shaky hands, pulse racing. Now she needed someone to validate the accuracy of her findings, an objective ethical authority whom she could trust implicitly. Without hesitation, Sara decided to quietly reach out to her former physics professor, Dr. Amy Clark, a brilliant woman who'd left an indelible mark on Sara's college career. If anyone could validate her findings, it was Dr. Clark. But would there still be enough time? Sara's heart raced as she approached the door to the supposedly secret server room. She had expected a difficult challenge. ZenithTech was notorious for their cutting-edge security systems. But this was something else entirely. A high-tech biometric lock now guarded the entrance, complete with an intimidating array of retinal and facial recognition scanners. Her mind raced through options before settling on a risky plan. Steeling herself, Sara pulled out a small device from her pocket, a scrambler that could disrupt the scanner systems just long enough for her to pry open a service panel and hotwire the circuitry. With expert speed and knowledge gained from years of tinkering, she began deciphering the intricate mechanisms within minutes. She worked feverishly, sweat beading down her forehead as she cross-referenced her engineering background and muttered curses under her breath when necessary. At last, after what felt like hours of intense focus, Sara heard the satisfying click that signaled success. With a sigh of relief, she grabbed the handle and pulled open the door. With a terrifying metallic screech, the hulking door of the server room opened, granting Sara access to commit her intrusion. She shivered as she jacked in her laptop and initiated her algorithm, knowing that time was running out. Sweat trickled down her face as she watched the download bar inch closer to completion. Then suddenly froze as Security Chief Alex Rogers burst into the room, weapon drawn. Sara's heart pounded in her throat as she scrambled away from the servers and ran. But it was too late. Alex reached out with one hand, nearly grazing her arm before she could dive into the maintenance tunnel and make her escape. Panting, Sara slumpered against the cold wall of the tunnel, feeling relief at having escaped capture and dread for what she had just done. But nothing could prepare Sara for the piercing noise that shattered the air like glass. Her mind reeled under its force, scrambling as if every single thing in existence had been frozen in mid-motion. The jarring sound intensified until it became an eerie chorus of voices. Sara Thompson. The cryptic architects had found her out. As an oppressive terror descended upon her like a physical weight, Sara knew there would be no way out this time. Her own actions had imperiled cosmic balance, beyond comprehension. The voices boomed throughout the chamber, reverberating through Sara's body like thunder. "You have triggered forces that cannot be reversed," they warned her. "The fate of your world and its people now hang in the balance between order and chaos. All futures branch from this pivotal moment." Time shuddered to a standstill as the architect's words washed over her. Then with a jolt, she found herself sprawled on the cold floor of the maintenance tunnel, every nerve tingling with terror. The warning rang out once more in her mind. "It is yours to right this wrong." Struggling to her feet, Sara weighed her options carefully. She had to get away from ZenithTech before security noticed her. But to where? Her only lead into the true purpose of the harvesting machine had been cut off abruptly. There seemed no hope of discovering its secrets now, only a desperate need for an escape route far from San Francisco. But just as quickly as the thought came, it evaporated as Sara realized she could not bring herself to abandon her hometown. Even if catastrophe loomed on the horizon, these were her people. No matter what happened, she would stay strong and fight by their side until the bitter end. Sara took a deep breath as she stepped into her boss's stark, minimalist office. The bright white walls and sleek metal furniture seemed to reflect the chill in the air and the iciness of her boss's gaze. She clutched her bag tightly, steeling herself for the meeting ahead. Athena Graves was seated at her desk, eyes glued to her computer screen, fingers clacking away on the keyboard. Sara stood silently, attempting to remain calm while pressure built up inside of her like a hot balloon. Athena finally paused and swiveled her chair around to face Sara, expression unreadable. "I'm sure you know why you're here," she said flatly. Sara's heart pounded, but she kept her face neutral. "No, ma'am. I was just told to report here." Athena's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Let's not play games. You know we monitor network activity closely here at ZenithTech. Your extracurricular hacking hasn't gone unnoticed." Sara swallowed hard but said nothing. "We value talent here, Sara, but ethics and loyalty above all else. Your actions have been disruptive, destabilizing even. I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Sara felt like someone had punched the wind out of her lungs. This was all she had known since graduating college, and the prospect of losing it filled her with an icy dread. Numbly, she nodded her understanding and moved to gather her things from the room. Just as she was about to pass through the doorframe, Athena called out one last warning. "Sara, you're young, smart, you have a bright future. If you can just learn to align yourself properly." The veiled threat sent shivers down Sara's spine as she hurried from the office and out into the streets outside. As she wandered aimlessly through the cityscape around her, reeling from the day's events, one thought kept gnawing away at her mind. What would happen if anyone ever found out what she had uncovered at ZenithTech? Her thoughts raced as she contemplated her actions. Every step forward felt like a descent into an abyss, and every bridge she burned was one she could never repair. Yet Sara pressed on, feeling a strange sense of duty to ensure her work wasn't in vain. She was met with familiar faces when she arrived back at ZenithTech. Though the staff seemed oblivious to her silent guilt, Sara couldn't help but notice their dismissive glances, as if they knew what she had done. Did they know? She wondered, taking a deep breath before making her way to the lobby. Sara's feet echoed off the walls of the lobby as dread filled her heart. With no job and all bridges burned, did she dare to take this last chance? The security guard nodded without recognizing her fear, a routine greeting for someone he saw every day. But this time, it meant something more. As the employee badge in her pocket granted access to secrets beyond any final line of defense, it was now or never. A sharp, electric smell filled Sara's nostrils as she cautiously set up her laptop. She had explored ZenithTech's security algorithms enough times to know the risks, but down in the depths of the server room this far below ground, she was certain she could evade any detection for a while. Her hands flew across the keyboard as she dove into the emotion-harvesting machine's tangled code. With ease, her fingers found the section she had already tampered with during previous infiltrations and made one small addition to it. A few lines of elegant code that would allow a select group of humans to keep their emotions unharvested if they managed to become aware enough to realize and desire this freedom. Sara leaned back and exhaled a relieved breath when she finished typing the last line. In an act of defiance towards their oppressors, she had stepped into the role of Prometheus and brought light into darkness. In doing so, she committed herself to remain and watch the ripples spread through ZenithTech and beyond. "We make our own destiny now," she whispered into the silent void around her. Over the next few days, Sara began noticing anomalies. At the coffee shop, a barista dropped a mug, staring at it for a beat on the floor, then calmly made herself a new drink before cleaning up the mess. On the subway, a businessman half smiled and said what sounded like nonsense words instead of droning about his commute. A taxi driver got out of her cab at a green light to smell a flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk. As more reports came in, truths were admitted and shared openly. Police officers apologized for brutality. Neighbors forgave old feuds. Couples realized they didn't need to have children to complete their lives. The true cost of harvesting was revealed. What had seemed efficient and productive was actually joyless, stressful drudgery. Human beings couldn't live this way if they tried. Sara watched these events with amazement, but kept silent. It wasn't just fear that held her back. She was simply too astonished to speak. Each revelation was a shock, but also an affirmation of her code's effect on people's lives. She'd known all along that something was wrong with society's values, but now she saw how far things had gone off track. For most people, there was no way to change these systems without sacrifice. Her sacrifice had made it possible for others to discover happiness again without having to. In a press conference, a CEO announced his company would shift to making art supplies instead of weapons. On a crowded train, an old woman suddenly broke into song in a soaring soprano, and her fellow commuters sang back in impromptu chorus. The icy veneer was melting. Sara almost didn't recognize this colorful, feeling, singing world. Yet, for all the beauty unfolding, a nervous pit hardened in her stomach. The architects remained eerily silent, even as their grand design unraveled. Sara could not escape the feeling she was still just a pawn in a cosmic game, whose shape remained obscure. Sara awoke with a jolt at precisely 3:33 a.m., the oppressive silence of her apartment bearing down on her like a weight. Her bones thrummed as though they sensed something immense and momentous was about to unfold. Scrambling for clothes and throwing open her door, Sara ran through the streets, ignoring the presentiment of danger that seemed to lurk in the shadows. Suddenly she skidded to a halt. An ear-splitting screech overwhelmed her senses as cracks spidered out over the night sky, shattering the illusion of reality into a million fractured shards. Beneath it all gleamed an unfathomable expanse of cosmic code, the raw programming fabric of space-time itself. As if ripped from her body, Sara felt a voice reverberate directly inside her mind, a thundering call that reverberated with terrible finality. You were warned, Sara Thompson. Your kind could never grasp the damage you would wreak on the cosmos. The ground beneath her disappeared, and she plummeted into dizzying darkness, which resolved into an image of Earth, verdant and serene, unaware that its future had been altered by one human's mistake. "We will quarantine this world," continued Legion's voice. "Cut off the contagion you unleashed, and salvage what cosmic harmony we can. For you, Sara Thompson, your true education begins here, in eternal exile between all dimensions." With these words, Sara felt herself unraveling, woven into the very fabric of the void, beyond time, beyond space, beyond mercy. This was no simulation. With a scream of triumph, Sara had broken through into something real, and now the shards of her soul shattered within her, stolen by a force beyond human comprehension. The sensation of life on Earth began to slip away from her, fading like a distant dream as the truth of Legion echoed through her consciousness. No one soul ever escapes our reach. The architects giveth, the architects taketh away. Then, with a final gasp of disbelief, Sara Thompson vanished, like an extinguished flame in the infinite night. Perhaps someday, somewhere, some version of her would be resurrected. But until then, she was nothing more than tragedy and warning born on the cosmic wind. Thank you for embarking on this riveting journey with The Emotion Harvesters, Sara's Race Against ZenithTech by D Coyote. If this story has captivated your mind and stirred your emotions, we invite you to become a part of our community. Leave a comment to share your thoughts, hit the like button to show some love, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next thrilling adventure. Your engagement fuels our creativity and helps bring more spellbinding tales to life. Stay tuned, and thank you for being an invaluable part of our storytelling experience.